Alright everyone, it's Josh, J Vintage Honda Minis, Orlando, Florida. So we're back on probably the last video for the series, see how much I can kind of squeeze in and still cover enough to make it through, but not too long. But believe it or not, my dog ate my puppy ate my memory card, so I filmed kind of putting this engine in and a couple different details, but I no longer have that footage, so we're gonna keep rolling from this point. Basically I used one of my wooden engine block build blocks, 2x4 rectangles or squares, to hold the engine at an appropriate height, and put the lower bolt in first down here that you see, and then you can rotate the engine up to the top mount and get that upper mount in. Make sure that all your electronics and everything are coming in through this hole here in the frame. You can go ahead and mount your petcock if you're doing that for the 2-into-1. I just use the air filter, stock air filter tab on the frame to bolt that on. I did do the stock kickstand foot pegs, and I'll show you a little spacer that I used and a little bit longer M8 bolts to allow for that spacer and still thread into the bottom of the engine block. But that's about all as far as I got. But we have those previous videos in the bottom of the summary on this video, how to run the electrical for this engine, and in the first two, I think I'm on my fourth video, but on the first video it was ordering all the parts to get this swap out done. The second video was pulling the engine, and then the third video was how to wire up the 12-volt setup to work with the stock harness, and then now we're on the fourth video, installing the Lifan engine. For the foot pegs, M8 bolt by 125 thread, but this is a 25mm long bolt now, and then this is about an 8mm thick spacer. You can do spacers of some form if you want to make them, or the easy way is to go ahead and get a M10 you see that M10 nut, so the M8 bolt slides right through it, and that's you know, about the same, roughly 8mm tall, but that's about minimum. You need about 8mm to make sure that on the bike, on these 125s, that this clears this case area. Alright, but once that's installed, you don't affect really the way that this foot brake sits, so you don't have any abnormal low setting on the factory foot brake. It sits nice. You know, you drop the foot pegs a little bit, so that all works out good. That's a cheap way to do it. Get yourself the bolt and then a nut if you want to do it. An M10 nut will fit right over that bolt, or make yourself some spacers. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and just keep working on getting everything put together. I'm going to tackle the wiring. The engine has their bullet connectors, and then we have the sub harness, so I'm going to make sure that the bullets and all that stuff connect. If not, I'll make a few changes on the harness to make it all connect nicely. We'll look at some of the wiring coming from the engine. Now this is an HK1 second gen CT70H bike. So this bike's harness has provisions for a neutral light. Easy way to know that your bike would be an HK1 is your fork setup. These are hydraulic forks, so that's a good indicator of what your bike you got pretty easily in my mind. But on the stock engine you would have a green, I think it's a green and red, green with a red stripe wire coming from this area on the Honda block, and that would be your neutral light wire indicator. So this one actually has several wires in it, and what this would be doing is giving you gear selections. We don't need that. What we do need to get is that green wire that's just below this bolt. It's hard to see, so we're going to go ahead and make sure that we find that green wire. Alright, so we want to get this green wire from the engine, and we're going to use you can use like a jeweler's really small jeweler's flathead, or this is a pen tool, 2.8 millimeter pen extractor. You can get in there and put that under there, and then that will just come out of that clip very easily. Okay, so now I'm gonna have to turn this into a male bullet connector, so I'll cut this off. Alright, so you can elect to solder on your connectors, but you know, if you look at all these factory things, these wiring harnesses and such, they're crimped on, and the tool that I use is made, it's called, the brand is Engineer, sorry, and this is the PA20, which has all the terminal sizes and millimeters that you're going to typically find on these Japanese bikes. This is a Japanese made tool, but it's Engineer PA-20, and this makes those professional crimps that you see on all these terminals. So go ahead and show you real quick. So I'm not going to do any soldering, but this is a really strong connection. You won't be able to pull this off. And I bought this tool on Amazon, they sell it. I don't know if you can see, but it's a really nice crimp. So anyways, and then now we're ready to plug this into the neutral light switch on that sub harness. So this is the lead coming from the engine stator. Everything is pretty much, these are all male bullets coming from the sub harness in the frame, and then these are all female bullet connectors. The only one that we have to change is the ground. Everyone else will plug and play. So I'm going to go ahead and just take the lead off the flywheel stator setup, cut this off, and then put a female end on it. Let's make our basic connections: ground, green to green, blue with a white stripe to, on this one is the blue to white stripe, and that is your CDI pulse pickup, which is this little box right here on the CDI engines. And then you have your coil voltage for your spark plug is the black and red, and then that plugs into your black and red. We'll review these two wires. You got two yellows. These are your accessory lighting leads. So we got two yellows coming from the engine, and then on the trail buddy harness you have a white and a yellow. So we'll review that real quick. We're going to want to test this stator from the lighting standpoint. We got these two leads which are yellow that represent the accessory lighting stator, and what you're going to want to do is put a voltmeter, get it set on the ohm setting, and we're going to see what happens when we do two tests on here. First one is I'm going to see what both these wires are when they're tested against each other, and they basically are going to zero out almost. Alright, and then we're going to want to take one of the voltmeter's leads and then also to the stator plate screw, and we're still stuck at one, so it's open. Alright, now we'll try the other one. One lead on that, and then back on the screw again, so that's open. Alright, so what we have here is a floating stator, and it's really needing a full wave regulator rectifier, and you would want to run all that voltage to the battery first. And since we're using a sub harness and the way that the CT70 harness is designed, that actually not all that voltage would be running to the battery first. Some of it runs through the key switch and then on its own circuit independent of the battery and turns on the headlights. Okay, and then the other power gets split and goes to the battery. So in this case there's a trick that you can do to use a half wave regulator with this floating setup, and I'll show you that. So in order to make the correction to get this all to work, I'm going to take, this is the lead from the stator itself, I'm going to take one of these yellow leads and this is going to go to ground, and then I'm going to take this and add a two-way splitter onto it and feed the sub harnesses yellow and white leads off of this one. Okay, so one is grounding and the other is feeding both of the other leads. So with that testing with the voltmeter testing procedure that I showed you, you can define if you have a floating lighting stator, which will require, really should require a full wave rectifier regulator, but there's a way around it, which I'm showing you here, and I showed you how to run one of the lighting leads from the coil to duplex it to take connection to both the white and yellow on the Trail Buddy harness. And then basically I just took a opened up the male or the female bullet end on the yellow wire here, and it goes around the already running ground, so it's just grounded to the ground that's going to run to the sub harness. So effectively we got that grounded and the other lead taking care of the other two connectors. Okay, so what with us doing that, we're able to use a half wave rectifier, even though that's really a floating setup there at the lighting coil. This Trail Buddy harness that is labeled for the Lifan 125 is not, this is why we're doing these changes, is not wired to be a full wave setup. So by doing these, you're able to get this this lighting coil to operate within the parameters of how this sub harness is designed by Trail Buddy. I did talk to the owner. This is not common, or maybe it is going to be more common now, but it wasn't common before to have a kickstart, like a Lifan 125 kickstart coming with a floating coil at the lighting. Usually it's a coil design that will work off a half wave. So the point is that Trail Buddy does have a harness, and it's labeled on that same checkout screen. It's under the YX140 design, and he's got that harness designed to work with a full wave floating stator. So if you want to check which engine you get in the mail, run that stator test that I'm showing you, and then order the appropriate sub harness based on what you have, or as we're doing, we're making it work by making these adjustments. Okay, and just a quick visual, this rectifier regulator is a full wave rectifier regulator versus the half wave style. So just from a dimensional standpoint, it's pretty noticeable of what the difference is from an aesthetic look. And then in the descriptions when you're checking out, not all of them, but this one, if you were buying this one, it does classify it as a full wave. But the biggest, easiest way to know is actually the dimensional shape of the actual unit itself. Most likely will determine, that you're going to have a full wave versus a half wave setup. On the other hand, if your engine comes and it's based on how we tested, you don't show the parameters that I had on my voltmeter, you have a half wave engine or half wave lighting stator coil, then you don't need to do any of this modification in this area. That it will just plug and play to this Lifan 125 sub harness. Okay, so basically don't do what I'm showing you. Just get rid of the duplex, plug your wire into a yellow to yellow, or whatever your colors are. Those lighting leads will just feed directly one to each one of these sub harness. The yellow will get one of your leads from your stator, and then this white one from the sub harness will take the other lead. Okay, so you don't need to do all this. This is just because we have a full wave floating stator on this particular engine, so we're making this whole setup work. Okay, and then again, if you have the other version, you're gonna straight up plug it, and then you still use the half wave regulator that I showed you, okay, originally in the other video, which I've showed you over and over in this video too. That's the regulator or rectifier that you want. Okay, for both of these setups, that's the regular rectifier that we're gonna go with, a half wave. I hope that
doesn't confuse you, it just clarifies.
The Trail Buddy high performance pipe, stock looking pipe I guess you can call it, fits with the shield on. It's pretty tight, but I was able to get it to work at the lower part where this guard kind of intersects with the pipe. I removed one of the little clips that is part of the lower sheet heeled bracket and then bent the tab, and it cleared this bar coming around and under. This fits over, it's pretty snug, but it will work. I'll ride it and make sure it doesn't vibrate and make a bunch of noise, but I think we'll be okay. This usually is on here as a spacer, so you don't need it with the way that this flange is bent on the pipe. So it actually comes in pretty tight, keeps the pipe towards the bike. So our previous video I compared this pipe to the Chinese pipe you can buy for 60 bucks on eBay. So this apparently is a different bend, because usually those pipes stick out way further, or a modified bend I guess. It fits a little nicer in my opinion, and then you usually have trouble down there. So apparently there's maybe a little bit of tweaking they did to this pipe to make it fit better, but this one does fit better than the those other cheapo ones that I've used before. Plus you get the bonus of this muffler part being pretty hollowed out, I guess, for higher flow, much bigger outlet diameter on this back pipe. Okay, so everything's on. It's all nice and snug. Don't forget your little copper crushed donut ring when you put your pipe back up. You don't need the 2 half-moon spacers on this kind of pipe because it has a pre-welded on spacer. And then I'm going to go ahead and get my 2 springs on for my brake pedal return and my foot switch, brake switch. And that's going to be pretty good on this part of the bike build. I'm going to leave this disconnected still because I am going to pull this wheel off and put a smaller sprocket on the rear. Let's get that rear sprocket changed out. That's why I left this brake rod unhooked here, because we're going to end up pulling this whole rear wheel assembly. Of course we don't have a chain on it yet, but we're going to go ahead and put some smaller sprocket in the back and our front sprocket, which is larger due to this engine having some more power and torque. Might as well take advantage of that. So I use these little stands pretty often. This is like 8.5 inches tall. You can get them on Amazon, but it gives you just enough room to clear the back tire. It's really stable. This bike's not going to go anywhere. These things can hold 300 plus pounds, collapsible, and you know, your front wheel's on the ground. So it's a nice little tool to have in the garage to help you kind of do a little work on these bikes. So basically all we're gonna have to do is untighten our chain adjusters, pull our axle, and then we'll slide our wheel out and get to the rear sprocket. It has a retaining clip on it, and then we can just pull it out, swap it. Alright, so this castle nut or locking nut on your axle is going to be a 19mm, so let's get that backed off real quick. And we got those 10mm on the chain adjusters. Go ahead and remove those enough to pull those off. So like the Honda factory bolt comes through with the head of it on the left side, so we're gonna knock it back out this way. Let's get a punch and a little hammer. Sometimes these are in there pretty good. And we're going to grease that axle back up when you put it back in too, to help keep it from seizing up. And then we got one more thing down here we're going to release, is the lower brake stay hold. So we'll just go ahead and loosen that up and get that bracket, and this will come out. Removing this sprocket straightforward. You got a snap ring. You're going to need a pretty big snap ring plier. This one opens up to 2 inches, which is what you need actually. So go ahead and get this ring removed. And then you should be able to just pull up. And you get your dust shield on here. It's a good time to check your brake shoes on the other side where the brake cover is, and swap those out if you need to. And then you got your cush drive system, which is these rubber isolators that help take some of the shock load up. But make sure your rubbers are still in good shape and not broken everywhere. This one's painted over so it looks cracked, but the rubber's good. So okay, so we'll take out the stock 45 tooth, and then I have a 33 tooth I'm gonna throw on. So we're getting kind of close to the hub here at this point. I think you can get down to like a 32, 31, 30 maybe. I don't know. Might be really close to the circumference of this hub, and then your chain is going to have a problem with touching that. But I have this 33 on the shelf, and that's what we're going with. Oops. Messed that up. Gotta put my dust shield back on. And when you're changing your sprockets, change your chain, your rear and your front sprocket all together, so it all wears together. Alright, push that back down enough to seat the snap ring back in. And then we'll remount the wheel the same way you took it off. Just make sure to put cotter pins on your axle ends for the safety castle nuts, and then on that brake stay bracket uses a cotter pin also. If it didn't have one, you need one, so you don't want that stuff backing off. We'll go back to the engine. We'll get the valves set real quick. Go ahead and drain this oil that comes in the engine. It's filled with oil, but we're going to drain it. We don't want to use that oil. The Lifan engine holds 900 mLs oil capacity, so we're going to fill it with about 850 to not overfill, because probably 50 mLs is sitting in this case in various areas. Also, I'm going to swap the drain plug out. This is a M12 by 1.50 thread pitch. This is a magnetic oil drain, so I'm going to swap this one in just to catch any kind of you know, as this thing's breaking in, to catch any of these shavings and small particles of metal. And then we'll fill it with, I use Shell Rotella T4 15W40 oil. It's got a good amount of zinc in it, content wise, to help with the flat tappet. And it's JZO MA wet clutch approved oil, and you get like 5 quarts or 4 quarts, can't remember, for like 14 bucks or less. So that's a good deal if you buy the Shell Rotella T4 15W40 oil. So open your tappet covers here. This is your intake side on top of the engine, and then your exhaust is on the bottom side. And then we're going to take our flywheel and we're going to rotate it. You're going to watch this tappet here. Again, we're going to go to top dead center of the combustion stroke. So we're watching this tappet. As soon as it drops and then comes back up, and then T mark on the flywheel will be where we need to be to set our valves. So it's going down, it's popping back up. Let's bring that up to the T mark on the case. There's a mark. I'm going to keep it right there, and now we're going to set the valve. So set to in inches, 3/1000ths of an inch on the intake, and 4/1000ths of an inch on the exhaust. You can basically just do that by loosening this tappet nut. Back that out. Slide that in. Move it
do it till you feel a little bit of resistance, but you can move this feeler gauge in and out. You don't want it to be locked down so you can't move it. And then we're going to tighten this nut back up. Going the wrong way. Alright, that's good. And then you're going to do that same thing on the intake, but use the 4/1000 of an inch feeler gauge. And then we're going to lock that back up when you're done, and then your valves will be set.
We'll wrap this video up because it's going to be pretty long so far again with this final valve setting on the engine, and then we'll continue with the whole process and wrap it up. Definitely in the next video it'll be wrapped up. Alright, thanks for watching, guys. Subscribe if you don't.